welcome. The topic with editorial of Hindu today is lapsing into contempt. Now, let us first go through some of the words that I have marked in this passage. The first is lapsing into. It refers to something that has expired and has not been updated as yet. A right that has become invalid because it has not been renewed or updated. So it says that some laws are there which require updation, and unless it is updated, the the application of that law uh, becomes deterrent. The second word is suo motu. It refers to on its own. See, in several instances, the court takes cognizance against an offense on its own without without uh, having any application for the matter. So even if there is no one to file any application for an offense, the court may act suo motu, may act on its own, ostensibly, on the face of it, apparently, scandalous or scurrilous. This refers to statements made for creating a kind of outrage, a kind of violence, a kind of unnecessary criticisms, things like that. Heavy handed, very forceful, perfunctory, carried out without effort or feeling. Doing something monotonously without any active interest is perfunctory action. Abrasive animadversion. Abrasive animadversion. Abrasive is something that erodes, a scrubber kind of thing. Animadversion is criticizing. So, cleaning by criticizing is what the meaning is carried over here in this passage. Cleaning by criticizing. On many occasions, criticization is done for improvement and not for detriment. Now, this is the meaning that has been applied over here in this passage. Inadvertent irony. Irony is saying something and doing just opposite to what you have said. It is inadvertent if it occurs by chance, unknowingly, unplanned. Unplanned irony is inadvertent irony. So with these words, let us go ahead with the topic. Lapsing into contempt. It says that the law related to contempt is outdated and requires an updation. Okay. What is the subtopic? Finding Prashant Bhushan guilty of contempt reflects a low threshold for criticism. Now, the meaning is very clear. It says that Prashant Bhushan has been found guilty of contempt, and this finding by the court shows that the court is not ready to accept any kind of criticism. Low threshold, low low acceptance. It is not ready to accept any kind of criticism. This is what it says. Threshold is the barrier point. The barrier point is quite low for accepting criticism over here. Okay, the passage. The Supreme Court's order finding Advocate Prashant Bhushan guilty of contempt of court reflects poorly on institutions tolerant to criticism. So this is a kind of a repetition of the subtopic. It says that Supreme Court order, the Supreme Court's order, which finds Prashant Bhushan guilty of contempt of court, shows that the tolerance to criticism is quite poor for the institution. Virtually, it means the Supreme Court is not ready to accept any kind of criticism against the institution, against Supreme Court itself. The judgment of a three-judge bench on suo motu contempt proceedings against Mr. Bhushan hardly adds to the dignity and majesty of the court that it ostensibly sets out to uphold. So, this is the thing, that the court that had proceeded with contempt against Mr. Prashant Bhushan on its own does not add any dignity and the majesty of the court that it apparently sets out to uphold. And the court keep its effort that the dignity of the Supreme Court should always remain high, and the majesty, the supremacy of the court must uphold. But this suo motu contempt proceedings against Mr. Prashant Bhushan does not add any dignity to the Supreme Court. This is what it says. It is unfortunate that two tweets and not any set of scandalous or scurrilous allegations have occasioned this heavy-handed treatment. Now, what the Supreme Court has done against Prashant Bhushan is a kind of heavy-handedness. It's kind of an overdoing kind of thing with full force, and such a treatment is unfortunate. It says that there were two tweets, and none of them were scandalous or scurrilous. None of them were in the form to arouse any outrage in the public. But the allegations are like that. And this is heavy-handedness of the court. In the 108-page opinion that largely draws upon past judgments delineating the circumstances in which the court will act in aid of its institutional reputation and authority, there is little more than a perfunctory analysis leading to the finding that the tweets amount to criminal contempt. Now it says that the order of the Supreme Court is of 108 pages, and the whole copy of that 108 pages carries judgments precisely, accurately describing the circumstances in which court will act against anyone damaging the reputation and authority of the Supreme Court, and there is nothing, almost negligible uh, uh, analysis with effort, leading to the finding that the tweet amounts to criminal contempt. So, with regard to criminality of the contempt, almost negligible uh, clues have been mentioned, whereas the most of the pages are full of the circumstances or the actions that draw such kind of action by the court, and those relate to damage of reputation and authority of Supreme Court. So this is the thing. The first tweet, in which an image of Chief Justice of India, S.A. Bobde, in an informal setting has been used to make a critical remark that he was denying citizens recourse to justice for fundamental rights violations, may be an exaggerated or even unwarranted view on the absence of physical hearing now. Now it says that in this case, the proceedings of contempt, Mr. Bhushan was not allowed physical hearing. The first tweet is said to have a critical remark which carried information like the Chief Justice denied citizens recourse to justice for fundamental rights violations. Now, if there is a violation of a fundamental right, citizen is allowed to visit the court. But it says that the tweet says remarks that the courts deny those recourse, and the sentence says that this is exaggerated, that this is something a kind of over-reporting or even unwarranted. This fact is in the exaggerated form. However, it is quite a stretch to say that it undermines the court's dignity, lowers its authority, or interferes with administration of justice. More so, it adds that it is quite a stretch, quite an expansion to say that it erodes the dignity of the court. This statement doesn't erode the dignity of the court or lowers its authority or interferes with administration of justice. It has nothing to do with these things. At best, it touches partially on At best, it touches partially on the CGI's personal conduct and partially on his administrative decision making. So it says that the tweet hits the Chief Justice's personal conduct rather than on a general opinion against the institution, and also the administrative decision making abilities of the Chief Justice. Neither part brings with it any exceptional malice or scurrility warranting action for criminal contempt. So, since nothing is there against the institution or the Supreme Court, so no malice, nothing bad or nothing outrageous is brought forth from the first tweet. It is precisely this sort of criticism that the judiciary ought to be able to shrug off. It is a kind of advice that such kind of criticism should be shrugged off by judiciary and should not be taken as contempt, because nothing has been spoken against the institution. The second tweet, in which Mr. Bhushan has blamed the court, more particularly the last four Chief Justices, for destruction of democracy in the last 6 years, even without a formal emergency, requires no defense. Now it says that Mr. Bhushan alleged at last four chief justices uh, by saying that they have done only to destroy democracy, and that too without a formal emergency. Now, this doesn't require any defense, because nothing has been said against the institution or the Supreme Court. So, no contempt should be made out. It is clearly in the nature of a political opinion. Very correct. It is a kind of political opinion, be it with reference to the working of the institution or the four personages who headed the judiciary during the period. So it refers to the working uh, that they are destroying democracy. These are political statements. It is difficult to agree that mere voicing of an opinion that successive chief justices have destroyed democracy would erode public trust in the judiciary. So it is a big question that mere voicing could erode the public trust of judiciary is not understandable. And further, especially in the backdrop of some former judges to holding sharply critical opinion of the conduct of some of them. So the opinion against some of the judges who held the post previously uh, doesn't carry any any contempt like situation as of such. In its nature, intent, and sweep, Mr. Bhushan, abrasive animadversion of judicial conduct, is no more discordant than a former Chief Justice of India being accused by his colleagues of being under executive influence or misusing his powers as master of the roster, with a view to obtaining favorable outcomes. Now it says that the criticism, no matter what it was by Mr. Prashant Bhushan, the intent and the speech is not as harsh as what the some of the colleagues of former Chief Justice had alleged uh, against the Chief Justice, against the former Chief Justice, that he was misusing his powers as master of roster. What is roster? This is allotment of cases. Allotment of cases to judges. The Chief Justice had taken power uh, to uh, to run that affair himself, and that is master of roster, with a view to obtaining favorable outcomes. Now this he did to muster favorable outcomes of the cases. So once a case is filed, it goes to a particular judge. There is a team for it to allot the cases. Now the Chief Justice, then the former Chief Justice, had attempted to overpower that thing, and that was alleged by his colleagues that the Chief Justice is misusing his powers only to have favorable outcomes of those cases. So the criticism of Mr. Prashant Bhushan, neither its nature nor its intent is as harsh as this one. There is some inadvertent irony in the court's claim that allowing Mr. Bhushan's remark to go unpunished would lower the country's image in the Committee of Nations. Now it says that the court claims that it says, the court states that if Mr. Bhushan doesn't go unpunished, is not punished, then the image of the country among the friend nations would be lowered. Now, this is ironical. This is ironical if we compare to what the colleagues of the previous Chief Justice had alleged against the Chief Justice himself. So this is ironical. At one place, they speak something of high moral value, and then they themselves are not working according to it. The highest court built its stalwart fame on stellar judgments and record of fearless independence. So, this court has a history. It has a history of stalwart fame and fearless independence. And on that background, it has issued judgments. So, this is a big thing. And this has been the tradition of the apex court. If at all it falls, it refers to fame. It falls. Why it refers to fame? Because it is followed by falls. The fame falls. If at all it falls, in the estimation of the world now, it may only be because of a growing perception of judicial evasion, self-imposed reticence, and quiet acquiescence in the face of executive power. So it says that if at all the fame falls now, it will be due to judicial evasion, evading to issue judgments which is rightful, and the self-imposed restraint, putting away from the correct path, and quiet reluctant acceptance in the face of executive power. Reluctant acceptance in the face of executive power is the concluding remark made by the author in this case. So, para 1 speaks of first tweet, para 2 speaks of second tweet, and then there is concluding remark by the author. With this, I close with a request to like and subscribe this channel. Thank you.